guys, it's Nikki from Love of Dirt. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be setting up our compost bin. I've actually been a little bit, been neglecting it a little bit because we've been using a lot of bokashi and I've just been burying it. We had our compost sort of set up in situ in random places around the garden just to get some beds that were pretty poor quality going again. But I'm going to sort of start looking back at getting them up and running again, back to where they were, so I can do my top-up beds with homemade compost, because we've been buying a lot lately, and lately I've just noticed it's not been as good and the gardens aren't bouncing back as quickly. So I'm going to show you how we set it up. I don't have a lot of stuff to fill it at the moment, but I'll just go through the process. So these are the bins that we use. They are just the 150 litre tumbleweed variety. In the past we have used tumblers, we've used all sorts of brands. We've used the ones that sort of come in the square, so they're like sections that you put together. But I found we have a beagle who likes to dig up smelly things, so these ones have been the best for us. They're fully enclosed. It's like a bin with the bottom cut out basically. But the one thing that is really cool about these is it has this lip. So what we do to prevent rodents and also the beagle getting in is we bury these down 10 centimeters. So that if anyone tries to dig, they hit this lip before they can actually get in. The only time that we've ever had rodents inside our compost bin is when we've left a cane toad inside and it's dug a tunnel out. So yeah, that's the only time that we've had them in. But yeah, another tip with the rodents is also making sure that you are doing the balance of browns to greens, and it's not stinky. So if it's ever stinky, we always add extra browns into our compost bin. And so far we haven't had problems. Obviously, if you've been watching us for a while, we definitely have rodent problems because of our chickens. They seem to attract them, and they do eat plants and stuff, but they've never really, aside from that one time when the cane toad was stuck inside, that's the only time that we've had rodents in our compost. This is one that we set up, so as you can see, it's buried down quite deep here, so that's to stop the rodents getting in. We've used these around the garden in garden beds that are sort of struggling a bit, and it does definitely help. But I do like to have the compost to be able to top up the beds as opposed to sort of just having it in situ. So ideally we would like to have 3 of these on the go, but currently we've only got 2. But yeah, they work really well for us. So we typically do a cold composting. It's just easier to be able to add things as we have them, as opposed to getting a whole bunch of stuff and filling a bin. But yeah, I definitely want to get into hot composting a little bit more. But basically all we do is we just layer up our bin with greens, which is our kitchen scraps or garden scraps, and then with browns, which is usually for us is the bedding from our chicken run. So once we clean that out, we have like a bit of a stash of basically it's sugarcane mulch that we put in our chicken nesting boxes and things like that. And obviously it has a little bit of extra nitrogen, which is the form of the manure. So let's just take a look inside. I've got some monitoring happening in here. So this is our old school thing. This is what we've used for a very long time. It's just a compost thermometer. It's quite a long probe, and it actually sort of shows you a bit about the temperatures. It does have Celsius up the top there, but the big ones, obviously it's made for Americans. It's in Fahrenheit, but yeah, basically it tells you when it's steady, when it's active, and when it's hot. So we've struggled a lot with getting our compost super hot for longer than a day. At the moment, because this pile's just been set up and I know for sure that we need to add more things into it, it's not really cooking at this point. The other thing that we're trialing at the moment, the guys from Monty Compost have sent me one of their monitors. So this basically has an app attached to it, which I connect via Bluetooth, and it tells me if I need to aerate it. They tell me if I need to add water, and whether or not my carbon to nitrogen ratios are right. So I'm trialing that to see how it goes, and I will report back on what I think about it. But yeah, that's a really cool thing to do if you're a bit of a compost nerd. Okay, tools that I use to aerate my compost. So when things are really hard, I use a fork, but all the time, every time I add stuff, I use the compost aerator. So you can get these at most garden centres, but basically it's just a big corkscrew and you just screw it in and lift it out and give it a jiggle. I recommend that when you add stuff to your compost pile that you always just use this, because if you don't aerate, what happens is it doesn't get the air that it needs to break down properly, but it also makes it very hard to do. So when we had COVID, I didn't come out and do any aeration of the compost because I was just too unwell. And I found that compost took so much longer because I couldn't get in and aerate. It was so compacted and I just didn't have the strength to do it. So always just sort of aerate it whenever you add stuff, and then that will make it a lot more easier to maintain. So whilst I have all of these whiz-bang monitors and stuff, I think the best tool for composting is actually your nose. So if your compost smells, if it doesn't smell like basically dirt, things are out of balance. And it's potentially anaerobic, and bad bacteria is growing, and that's why it is smelling. So to combat that, aerate it and also add some more browns. So things like, we often just have a bag of sugarcane mulch, but depending on the season, we might use dried leaves, or whatever we've got around. Cardboard is kind of hit and miss with getting that balance right, but if you've shredded it up really fine, then it will work as well. So that's just really my number one tip with composting, is kind of follow your nose. So I get asked a lot if there's anything that, can I put onions in compost and can I put citrus in compost? Yes, you can, absolutely. We don't give that to our worms because it makes the worm farm too acidic and they don't like that. So we reserve it for our compost. Things like cooked foods and fats and dairy products as well shouldn't be put directly in your compost bin. It's going to attract those rodents as well. So what we do is we go through a fermentation process with using bokashi, and that helps break down that a lot quicker. So we use three methods of composting in our garden. So we have our worm farm, and they get all of the good stuff. I love the worms because their compost is far superior, and I can make actively aerated compost tea to give my garden a feed a lot easier with the worm castings. The second thing we do is bokashi, and I resisted bokashi for a very long time because I thought I didn't want to have to buy an extra product to compost, because you do have to buy the grains or the stuff to help it ferment. But after having kids and they always being sick and having the plague, we have a lot of food that they waste. So instead of just chucking it in the bin, and it's stuff that I wouldn't normally put in compost that would attract the rodents, instead of putting it in the bin, we started using bokashi, and we do that for meat offcuts as well, because we used to give a lot of that to our dog, but our dog now is 15 years old and she can't handle that kind of stuff. So that's why we've implemented the bokashi. And the final one is obviously the regular compost. So the bokashi goes into the regular compost once it's gone through the process of breaking down and fermenting a little bit. Otherwise we will bury that in the garden as well. So there's a couple of options with that. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you give us a thumbs up, leave a comment if you've got any questions below, and if you haven't subscribed already, please make sure you do so and get that notification bell so you are updated when we post our videos. See you guys next time. Bye.